Have you ever noticed that the people who seem impossible to manipulate are rarely the strongest, the loudest, or the smartest in the room? They simply understand one truth that most people ignore. The greatest battle is never against another person. It is against the chaos inside your own mind. The moment you master yourself, you become far more difficult to outsmart than anyone who is still controlled by impulse. Most people spend their lives trying to gain an advantage over others. They study persuasion, influence, confidence, and strategy, believing these are the keys to staying ahead. They become obsessed with understanding how people think, how they react, and how they can anticipate every move. But they overlook the one opponent who defeats them more often than anyone else ever could: their own emotions. Before another person can deceive you, your fear has already whispered in your ear. Before someone manipulates your decisions, your ego has already convinced you that you cannot be wrong. Before anyone gains control over your actions, your impatience has already stolen your ability to think clearly. This is why true mastery never begins by studying other people. It begins by studying yourself. Take a moment to reflect on the biggest mistakes you have ever made. Were they caused by a lack of intelligence? Probably not. Most costly decisions are made in moments of emotional pressure. Anger convinces you to speak words you cannot take back. Anxiety pushes you into choices driven by fear instead of reason. Pride blinds you to valuable advice because admitting weakness feels uncomfortable. The desire for approval leads you to trust people too quickly or sacrifice your own interests just to avoid disappointing someone else. In nearly every case, it is not another person's strategy that defeats you. It is your inability to manage what is happening within. Human nature follows predictable patterns. When people discover your emotional triggers, they begin to understand how to influence your decisions. If they know criticism makes you defensive, they will criticize you. If they know rejection terrifies you, they will threaten distance. If they know praise makes you careless, they will flatter you until your judgment weakens. This is not because they possess extraordinary power. It is because ungoverned emotions create predictable behavior. A person who reacts impulsively becomes easy to read, and what is easy to read is easy to influence. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine someone who remains calm when others become emotional, someone who pauses before speaking, someone who refuses to make important decisions while angry, anxious, or desperate. Such a person becomes difficult to predict because they are no longer controlled by the moment. Their confidence does not rise with compliments or collapse with criticism. Their focus remains steady even when chaos surrounds them. This kind of inner discipline creates an advantage that no shortcut can replace. It protects judgment when others lose theirs and creates opportunities that emotional people never notice. Self-mastery also protects your peace. In a world filled with constant comparison, endless opinions, and relentless pressure, emotional exhaustion has become common. Many people carry stress that does not belong to them, chase approval they do not need, and compete in battles that offer no real reward. The strongest individual quietly steps away from these distractions. They understand that every unnecessary emotional reaction consumes energy that could have been invested in growth. Instead of fighting every argument, they strengthen their character. Instead of proving themselves to everyone, they improve themselves every day. That quiet discipline compounds over time until confidence is no longer something they perform. It becomes who they are. Never forget this truth. Outsmarting others is temporary. Outsmarting your own fear, ego, anger, and impatience is permanent. The person who cannot be controlled from within is the person who becomes impossible to control from without. Master your own mind first, and the world will find it far more difficult to master you. Most people believe intelligence is revealed by how much they speak. They enter every conversation determined to impress, eager to display their knowledge, defend their opinions, and prove their value. They mistake constant talking for confidence and quick responses for wisdom. But if you study the individuals who consistently make the best decisions, who understand people with remarkable accuracy, and who rarely find themselves caught by surprise, you will notice a completely different pattern. They are not rushing to speak. They are patiently observing. While everyone else is trying to be noticed, they are quietly noticing everyone else. This single habit separates reactive minds from strategic minds. Human beings reveal far more than they intend to. Every conversation contains information hidden beneath the words. A person's choice of language, the emotions behind their voice, the topics they avoid, the stories they repeat, and even the moments when they become unusually defensive all reveal something about their priorities, fears, ambitions, and insecurities. Most people never recognize this because they are too focused on preparing their next sentence. They listen only long enough to respond. They do not listen to understand. As a result, they leave conversations believing they have communicated effectively, while missing the most valuable information that was placed directly in front of them. Observation begins with patience. It requires resisting the urge to interrupt, correct, or immediately share your own experience. Instead of asking, "What should I say next?" begin asking, "What is this person showing me?" without realizing it. Suddenly, every interaction changes. You notice how someone's confidence disappears when certain subjects arise. You notice how another constantly seeks recognition because they secretly fear being overlooked. You notice who remains calm under pressure and who becomes emotional the moment circumstances change. None of these insights require extraordinary intelligence. They require presence. And presence is impossible when your own voice is louder than your attention. There is another reason observation creates such an advantage. Every unnecessary word gives away a piece of you. When you constantly explain your plans, reveal your frustrations, or announce every intention, you provide others with a map of your thinking. Some people will use that knowledge to support you, but others may use it to predict your decisions or influence your emotions. This does not mean becoming secretive or distrusting everyone. It means understanding that thoughtful communication is stronger than endless communication. The more selective you become with your words, the more meaningful they become. People begin listening because they know you speak with intention rather than impulse. Silence also protects you from one of the greatest enemies of good judgment: assumption. When you speak too quickly, you often fill the gaps with your own conclusions. When you observe first, you allow reality to reveal itself before your emotions begin creating stories. This simple habit reduces unnecessary conflict, prevents impulsive decisions, and strengthens emotional control. Instead of reacting to appearances, you respond to patterns. Instead of judging one moment, you recognize behavior repeated over time. That is where genuine understanding begins. This discipline also transforms your inner world. You become less anxious because you no longer feel pressured to prove yourself in every room. You become less reactive because you are focused on understanding instead of winning. Stress loses much of its influence because your decisions are no longer driven by emotional urgency. Quiet observation creates mental clarity, and clarity produces confidence that does not depend on recognition from others. The strongest presence in any conversation is often the person who is completely comfortable listening, while everyone else competes to be heard. Remember, every person you meet is constantly communicating, even when they are silent. Their habits, reactions, priorities, and emotions tell a story long before their words do. Those who learn to observe without rushing to judge gain an advantage that cannot be achieved through clever arguments or louder voices. They understand people not because they control them, but because they have learned to pay attention where everyone else is distracted. The one who speaks less often discovers what everyone else is unintentionally revealing. There is one weakness that repeatedly destroys intelligent people: and it has nothing to do with a lack of knowledge. It is the inability to remain calm when emotions begin to take control. A single moment of anger can erase years of trust. A few seconds of fear can convince you to abandon an opportunity that could have changed your life. One emotional reaction can expose your intentions, reveal your insecurities, and hand another person the very advantage they were searching for. This is why emotional discipline is not simply a personality trait. It is a form of strength. The individual who controls their emotions controls their decisions, and the one who controls their decisions quietly shapes the direction of their future. Most people believe they are making logical choices, but if they look honestly at their lives, they will discover something different. How many arguments began because pride refused to remain silent? How many opportunities were lost because anxiety whispered that failure was inevitable? How many relationships ended because frustration spoke louder than wisdom? Human beings rarely regret the moments when they pause to think. They almost always regret the moments when emotion spoke before reason had a chance to arrive. That is why emotional reactions become predictable. Once someone discovers what angers you, frightens you, or flatters your ego, they begin to understand exactly how to influence your behavior. Imagine someone criticizing your work in front of others. The impulsive mind immediately feels attacked. Anger rises, the heart beats faster. Words are prepared before understanding has even begun. In that moment, the criticism is no longer the greatest danger. Your reaction is. If you respond with hostility, you reveal that your emotions can be controlled from the outside. You have allowed another person's words to dictate your state of mind. But if you remain calm, listen carefully, and respond only after emotion has settled, something remarkable happens. You keep ownership of your judgment. Instead of becoming part of someone else's emotional storm, you become the one person in the room capable of seeing clearly. Calmness is often misunderstood as passivity, but nothing could be further from the truth. Remaining composed does not mean ignoring problems or refusing to defend yourself. It means choosing the right response instead of the fastest one. It means understanding that strength is measured not by how quickly you react, but by how wisely you respond. The strongest leaders, negotiators, and decision-makers are rarely those with the loudest voices. They are the ones who remain steady when everyone else is overwhelmed by panic or frustration. Their emotional stability becomes an anchor in moments of uncertainty, allowing them to recognize opportunities hidden beneath chaos. There is another reason emotional control creates such a powerful advantage. It protects your mind from unnecessary stress. Every impulsive argument, every sleepless night spent replaying criticism, every emotional battle fought inside your thoughts consumes energy that could have been invested elsewhere. Anxiety grows when every opinion feels like a personal attack. Stress multiplies when every setback is treated as a permanent defeat. But the disciplined mind learns to separate temporary emotion from lasting reality. It recognizes that feelings are important, but they are not always accurate guides for important decisions. This awareness creates resilience. Instead of being carried away by every emotional wave, you become the one who learns how to navigate through it. Notice how difficult it is to manipulate someone who refuses to react impulsively. Insults lose their power because they do not provoke immediate anger. Flattery loses its influence because confidence no longer depends on praise. Fear loses much of its control because decisions are made through reflection rather than panic. Such a person becomes unpredictable, not because they hide their intentions, but because their actions are guided by principles instead of temporary emotions. That quiet consistency earns respect in every environment. People begin trusting their judgment because it is not controlled by the mood of the moment. Emotional mastery is not achieved in one dramatic event. It is built through countless small choices. Every time you pause before responding, every time you refuse to let anger make your decisions, Every time you choose clarity over impulse, you strengthen a part of yourself that no one can easily manipulate. Over time, this discipline becomes your greatest advantage. Not because it helps you overpower others, but because it prevents others from overpowering you. The person who refuses to surrender their emotions to the moment is the person who quietly gains control of their future. There is a silent mistake that keeps many intelligent people from reaching their full potential. It is not a lack of talent, knowledge, or opportunity. It is the belief that success comes from saying yes to everything and everyone. They answer every message the moment it arrives. They volunteer for every responsibility. They become available whenever someone asks for help. They try to solve every problem placed in front of them, believing that constant availability is a sign of strength. But over time, they notice something unexpected. Their energy begins to disappear. Their thoughts become scattered. Their decisions lose clarity. The more they try to please everyone, the less control they have over their own lives. What they mistake for dedication slowly becomes emotional exhaustion. Every person wakes up with a limited amount of attention, focus, and emotional energy. Think of it as a valuable resource that cannot be endlessly replaced throughout the day. Every unnecessary argument, every meaningless distraction, every obligation accepted out of guilt quietly drains that resource. Yet most people spend their energy as though it has no limit. They become emotionally invested in opinions that do not matter. They carry stress created by problems they cannot solve. They worry about how they are perceived instead of focusing on how they are growing. By the end of the day, they feel mentally exhausted without accomplishing what truly mattered. This is why strong boundaries are not walls that separate you from the world. They are filters that protect what deserves your attention. A person without boundaries eventually becomes controlled by the priorities of others. Every request feels urgent. Every opinion feels important. Every criticism demands a response. Before long, they are living a life designed by everyone else's expectations instead of their own purpose. They mistake constant movement for meaningful progress, never realizing that much of their effort is directed toward battles they never needed to fight. One of the greatest sources of emotional burnout is the endless pursuit of approval. Many people fear disappointing others more than disappointing themselves. They accept invitations they do not enjoy. They remain in conversations that drain their spirit. They continue relationships that constantly demand more than they give. Deep inside, they know something is wrong, yet guilt convinces them to keep sacrificing their peace. What they fail to understand is that every unnecessary yes becomes a quiet no to something more important. Every hour spent chasing approval is an hour stolen from personal growth, meaningful work, or genuine rest. Notice how different emotionally disciplined people move through life. They do not rush to answer every demand placed upon them. They pause before making commitments. They understand that protecting their time is not selfish, it is responsible. They know that if they constantly exhaust themselves, they will eventually have nothing meaningful left to offer. Their confidence comes from knowing that they do not need to earn their worth through endless availability. Instead of trying to be everywhere, they choose carefully where their presence creates the greatest value. Healthy boundaries also protect your judgment. Stress has a remarkable ability to narrow your thinking. When your mind is overwhelmed by obligations, your decisions become reactive rather than intentional. Anxiety grows because your attention is divided in too many directions. But when you remove unnecessary commitments and protect your emotional space, clarity begins to return. You start recognizing which opportunities deserve your effort and which distractions only appear important. You stop confusing urgency with significance. The result is not only greater peace, but also better decisions, because a focused mind always sees farther than an exhausted one. There is another truth that many overlook. People often respect the person who values their own time more than the person who gives it away without limit. This is not because boundaries make you distant. It is because they communicate self-respect. When your attention is intentional, your presence becomes meaningful. When your commitments are selective, your words carry greater weight. Others begin to understand that your energy is something you choose to share, not something they are entitled to receive. That quiet confidence changes the way people respond to you, because respect naturally follows those who first respect themselves. Protecting your energy is not about becoming cold, indifferent, or unavailable. It is about ensuring that your best attention is reserved for what truly deserves it. The strongest individuals are not those who do the most. They are those who refuse to waste themselves on what does not matter. They understand that every decision about where to place their focus is also a decision about the kind of life they are creating. Guard your time, protect your energy, and your greatest advantage will always be the clarity that others lose through constant distraction. The people who consistently stay ahead in life are rarely the fastest to act. They are the ones who think beyond the present moment. While most individuals become consumed by what is happening today, they quietly ask a different question. What happens next? This simple habit separates reaction from strategy. Every decision creates consequences, and every consequence creates another opportunity or another obstacle. Those who pause long enough to see the chain of events before taking action avoid mistakes that trap everyone else. They understand that intelligence is not measured by solving today's problem alone, but by preventing tomorrow's problem before it ever appears. Impulsive decisions are usually expensive because they satisfy immediate emotions while ignoring long-term reality. Anger demands immediate revenge. Fear demands immediate escape. Excitement demands immediate commitment. But emotions often focus on the present, while wisdom looks further ahead. The disciplined mind slows down long enough to examine patterns, recognize hidden incentives, and consider outcomes that others overlook. This habit protects you from unnecessary stress, emotional regret, and decisions that feel good for a moment but create lasting consequences. Patience is not hesitation. Strategic thinking also requires learning from patterns instead of isolated events. Most people judge situations based on what they see today. Wise individuals observe repeated behavior. They notice how people respond under pressure, how they handle success, how they react to failure, and how their actions remain consistent over time. Patterns reveal character far more accurately than promises ever can. By paying attention to what repeats itself, you stop being surprised by outcomes that were quietly predictable all along. Every meaningful advantage begins long before the decisive moment arrives. Preparation creates confidence, and foresight creates freedom. When others are forced to react, you are already ready because you invested time in thinking before acting. That quiet discipline does not guarantee perfection, but it greatly reduces unnecessary mistakes and allows you to move through life with greater clarity, purpose, and resilience. The future belongs to those who prepare for it while everyone else is still reacting to the present. True dominance is often misunderstood. Many imagine it as the ability to intimidate, overpower, or force others into submission. They believe the strongest person is the one who inspires fear, wins every argument, or always has the final word. But history tells a different story. Fear creates obedience only for a moment. The moment people no longer fear you, your influence begins to disappear. Respect, however, follows a different path. It cannot be demanded. It is earned through consistency, emotional discipline, competence, and character. The individuals who leave the deepest impact on others are rarely those who dominate through force. They are the ones whose presence naturally commands attention, because their actions speak louder than their words. Think about the people you genuinely admire. Chances are, it is not because they constantly reminded everyone of their importance. It is because they remained composed when others became emotional. They kept their promises when excuses would have been easier. They stayed focused while others were distracted. Their confidence did not come from proving themselves in every conversation. It came from knowing exactly who they were, regardless of who was watching. This quiet certainty is impossible to imitate because it is built over time through discipline rather than performance. People instinctively trust those whose actions remain steady even when circumstances change. Many spend their lives chasing recognition instead of building character. They want admiration before they develop competence. They want influence before they earn credibility. They seek attention through loud opinions, dramatic reactions, or constant displays of confidence. Yet these forms of influence are fragile because they depend entirely on the approval of others. The moment applause disappears, so does their certainty. Genuine respect works differently. It grows slowly through integrity, patience, and the ability to remain true to your principles even when no one is rewarding you. That kind of influence cannot be taken away because it comes from within, not from the opinions of the crowd. As you reflect on everything discussed, a clear pattern begins to emerge. You learned that true strength begins with mastering your own emotions before trying to understand anyone else's. You discovered the value of observing more than speaking, allowing patience to reveal what haste often hides. You saw how emotional control protects your judgment when others are ruled by impulse. You understood that guarding your time and energy with healthy boundaries preserves the clarity required for wise decisions. You recognize that thinking several steps ahead prevents unnecessary mistakes and transforms preparation into quiet confidence. Each lesson builds upon the one before it, leading to a single truth. The greatest advantage you will ever possess is not the ability to control other people, but the ability to remain in control of yourself. When your identity no longer depends on praise, criticism loses much of its power. When your peace is no longer controlled by circumstances, stress begins to fade. When your decisions are guided by values instead of temporary emotions, confidence becomes stable instead of fragile. This is the kind of strength that lasts through success and failure alike. It creates influence without manipulation and leadership without intimidation. People are naturally drawn toward those who embody calm certainty because such qualities are increasingly rare in a world driven by distraction and emotional reaction. Never measure your success by how many people you can overpower. Measure it by how much wisdom, discipline, and integrity guide your actions when no one is watching. The strongest person in the room is rarely the one demanding attention. It is the one who has mastered themselves so completely that attention arrives without being chased. Master yourself, earn genuine respect, and you will possess a form of influence that no fear, no title, and no temporary victory can ever replace.